When I watched the reviews from all the established filmmakers on YouTube saying that this was the best camera they'll never use, I wondered, what the heck was wrong with all of them? Perhaps they're spoiled, perhaps they have their own film team, but if you're a standalone filmmaker or an upcoming YouTuber or content creator of any sorts, and all you had was yourself, this camera should be in your arsenal, and this camera should be taken very seriously. They say the 50mm is the king of B-roll. Well, I'm here to tell you that it's met its match. There's a new king of B-roll. When you have a camera that can see anything and everything, regardless of whose hands you put it into, from noob to professional, your gain for usable footage and unique footage starts to change dramatically. Aside from true cinematography, I've done it all. From starting out on a crappy little Droid phone, filming, editing, producing, and publishing simple YouTube videos, all the way to actual filmmaking ventures that we've been paid lots of money to do. I will tell you, I don't know what I was doing all my life without this camera. Let me show you what it can do. That was my team, and we're back here just messing around here in the backcountry of Illinois fishing, and we've created an outdoor company through our influence in filmmaking, photography, and social media content creation. We're running and gunning all the time. There is no time for true cinematography, messing with a bunch of variable NDs, setting up lighting, none of that BS. We are moving anything from high-end mirrorless cameras with shotgun mics on gimbals to just a lot of action cameras. And I'll tell you, the action cameras get it. Also, our roles switch constantly. These guys go from filmmaking themselves all the way to being the content that I'm creating, the people standing in lane that I'm filming. And when that happens, I need something that can film everything, that can get unique footage. And I also need something that is bulletproof. Right now, this is getting pretty crazy shots, stuff that you wish you could get with a drone, but you can't because you would crash it. But if you stuck an action camera on a giant selfie stick like this, there's no way you could replicate this footage. This footage looks like drone footage because it's the stability inside it in conjunction with the lock, the directional lock that you can get with the 360 camera, no matter what direction the camera's pointing to, is invaluable. Except for when you do this. When you don't have the camera aligned with a selfie stick, you lose its ability to, to erase the selfie stick. I angled the camera up on the selfie stick on purpose to get a different view because I thought it would stitch better, but then that happened. So if you care about that, then be cautious of that. Other than that, look at all this. Try and get that with any other camera. It's not possible. And I will also tell you that this is footage we are getting over obscenely bumpy terrain, and it's almost played down because of how stable the camera is. You cannot even tell how terrible. I was shaking. We were shaking everywhere in that side by side. So much that I thought the footage would be unusable when we processed it, but then it looks like we're barely even moving at all once we put it in edits. But what kind of outdoorsmen will we be if we didn't go and troll a local Bass Pro by recording everything with a giant selfie stick that's going to obviously attract a bunch of attention? Why? To get footage like this, footage you could only get with a drone. Try and fly a drone in front of a store like this. See how fast you last before you get kicked out. But before we go in, let's check this little bridge thing. I saw some fish underneath the water creek, and I've always kind of wanted to stick a phone down there or do the whole little flip-flop on a phone trick, but I'm too afraid that my phone will sink underneath the bridge and I'll lose it forever. So let's go ahead and see what this camera can do. It has 3 frame rates. It has 5.7K 30, 4K 60, and 3K 100. And right now we are filming in 3K 100. So the resolution does decrease pretty dramatically. The lower in frame rate you go, you get that true nice crisp footage in 5.7K that we were viewing earlier. So that is an issue. So I'm hoping later on that Insta360 gets like 5.7K 60. I think that'll be just a huge game changer. Then the 100 frames per second though, it does look pretty smooth. Little grainy. You can kind of fix some of that in post, do noise reduction. But no matter what frame rate or resolution I had it in, I wasn't particularly fond of how it made faces look. But I didn't particularly care about that because I was using it for B-roll, this stuff. You'll never get footage like that without a drone, and good luck getting any permission to fly a drone in this unless the company hires you to go get footage like that. That's invaluable B-roll footage. I did a lot of noob things. I should have found settings, messed with the settings. I had an HDR setting, I was afraid to use it, kept it in standard, and I also put a GoPro mount, and it doesn't align and allow it to stitch correctly. So you see that little black half moon? That was in a lot of my footage. That was annoying, but that goes away if you use the actual mount that Insta360 sends you with the kit. After this venture, I went to try and test what it could truly do. We need to market this outboard motor because we started carrying them in our store. We're trying to grasp unique footage that we can't grasp on our smartphones or on any sort of camera. Stuff like this you can't get with anything else. You need a small action camera, and you would need one that doesn't have a static lens. And again, we're running it at 3K 100, and I know the resolution kind of chops up, but if you look, when you're recording objects in a big wide area like this, it doesn't seem to terribly matter. So when you start to get kind of some close-ups, it starts to get a little fishy, but this right there, the water, even this kind of far away angle, it looks good. But the actual favorite thing for me about this camera, and also the One X2, is the time-lapse feature. The 360 time-lapse feature is invaluable. My main role when I'm by myself is being a DIY fabricator and creating this type of content. And you all see the static time lapses. That's a real big kind of played out thing all over YouTube, all over social media. I mean, it's effective as long as you know what you're doing and you know how to cut out times and move stuff. But unique footage like this, unique in that the camera is actually following you while you're speeding it up. When you do this, you lose all sound and you lose the ability to motion track when you edit in the 360 app, but who cares? Like, look what it's doing. Not to mention, the battery lasts 1,000,000 times longer, and so does the SD memory card storage. You can just constantly record on time-lapse forever. And if you have, a USB-C cord set up so that the battery just constantly gets charged, this thing can run the whole day, or however long you need it, however long the SD card allows. I touched on this briefly on my review about the One X2 doing this. I didn't leak a lot of it because not a whole lot of anybody, in fact, nobody that I know is actually doing this. It's only me. I get a lot of compliments from my audience who really don't terribly care about filmmaking, but they'll go out of their way to say, hey, nice editing. And when the audience goes out of its way to compliment me or ask me what kind of camera I'm using, that's when you know it's really effective, because the audience doesn't care if it's 4K or 720. Doesn't care about frame rates, doesn't care about dynamic range or color depth, any of that stuff that we go on and ramble on for hours talking about because we like to hear ourselves talk on YouTube. Like, they don't care. What they care about is what is pleasing to the eye. And if it's visibly pleasing to the eye, they will watch it, and they will watch it longer because it's satisfying to watch. This footage here is much more satisfying to watch than a static time lapse, 100 times more. And it made this time lapse tutorial of this hydroturf install on this boat deck way more interesting to watch, way more palatable to watch. But if we're giving some objective opinions here in terms of what I didn't like about the camera, the functionality of the camera itself is one thing. We're viewing it right now in real time, but the setup, how it is laid out, the whole interchangeable lenses, the case, that stuff is going to be really good for somebody getting into a 360 camera. Like a family who wants to record certain events here and there, wants to only take one camera that will record both static and 360 content, then that's going to be the camera. This is kind of for like the introductory person who's getting into it. It's a perfect camera for that. But for like somebody recording professional filming, it's not as robust as like the One X2 setup. It also doesn't stitch as well because it's fatter, and that's something to think about. And you can't replace the batteries near as easy, so interchangeable batteries is a thing. I also thought they were just really going backwards with keeping the rectangular design like the GoPro, when the One X2 design is just way better. For one, the One X2 is slimmer, so it's going to stitch better. It's also lighter, and it aligns with the selfie stick way better than this thing did. The reason why I was angling it up is because I didn't particularly care about how it was angling out. It was fatter, and I could visibly tell when I was reviewing some footage that it wasn't stitching right. So I angled the lens up so it wouldn't have to stitch, but then I lost the disappearance of the selfie stick, which is when I ran into that problem out there in the sticks. Plus, the plastic cage is just very off-putting. Like, even GoPro got rid of that and just put regular tabs down there that were permanently mounted to the underneath the camera, so you wouldn't have to deal with that anymore. And they did that because after so many complaints of those stupid cages breaking and just being kind of a nuisance, they got over it. So I think obviously you needed the cage to keep those three components together, but I don't know how much more the One RS really accomplished over the One X2. If all that was just to accommodate the static lens in conjunction with the 360 lens to make this a full twin setup, I just didn't think the static lens was that great. It wasn't bad footage, it was just unremarkable footage. Not so much that I think compromising the entire design of the camera itself was worth keeping along that static lens. But if you're trying to target new oncoming audiences by giving them the option of having a static lens and also the 360 lens, so you're not just betting all your money on the 360 lens, then it's probably good. Although if you're trying to get somebody into 360, this is a more expensive camera setup than, say, the One X2, which is just a total 360 camera. Overall, the whole twin setup I'm not a fan of, but the technology, the dynamic range, the color depth, the robustness, the battery life, the resistance to overheating, definitely a win. And that it might also be a major part of why it's made the way it is. Maybe that's also part that I'm missing, but I did enjoy this. I will keep it. I will use it. The more 360 cameras, the better. You get like 2 or 3 of these things, and it's an entire film crew. You stick it in strategic spots during your like little venture of filmmaking, and it'll record everything. It's awesome. You just gotta crop the footage right, and it looks fantastic. Remember, done is better than perfect. We're living in an age where the iPhone is very soon going to catch up to the high-end mirrorless cameras, and everybody's going to have an equal platform, and it's going to come down to the story. So when you tell your story, you want to make it as unique as possible. So be unique.